Again. What a joy and blessing it is to be back in the house of the Lord. If you've got a copy of God's Word, turn with me to Genesis chapter 6. Genesis chapter 6. I shared this morning we're going to look at a few things about Noah. Now, if you've been watching any of the Bible readings I've been putting on Facebook, we're up to Genesis chapter 14. We've worked our way through this, but what we've seen so far to this point is that in Genesis 1, God creates everything that we see in 6 days. On Genesis 2, we see that God created everything in 6 days and He rested. Towards the end of Genesis 2, we see that Adam needed somebody. He wanted a helpmate. So God caused Adam to go into a sleep. And during that sleep, He took his rib and He made Eve out of that. And then in Genesis 3, we see the serpent. We see the serpent comes into play and he tempts Eve. And he tempts Eve of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And Eve gives in and Adam follows suit. And so where we're up to right now is Genesis 6. And what we've seen is that, or what we're going to see tonight is that everything that God has created, the world that He's created, this masterpiece and this beauty that He's created, man has turned wicked. God hasn't made it wicked. God hasn't made it sinful, but man has. Man has. So from the beginning, we see temptation. We see the devil. We see him trying to mess up everything that God has created. And in Genesis chapter 6, we're going to look at a few verses. Genesis chapter 6, starting at verse 5, it says, "Then the Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great on the earth, and that every intent of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And the Lord was sorry that He had made man on the earth, and He had grieved in His heart. So the Lord said, I will destroy man, whom I have created from the face of the earth, both man and beast, creeping things and birds of the air. For I am sorry that I have made them. But Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord." This is the genealogy of Noah. Noah was just a man, perfect in his generations. Noah walked with God, and Noah begot 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. The earth was also was corrupt before God, and the earth was filled with violence. So God looked upon the earth, and indeed it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted their way on the earth. And God said to Noah, the end of all flesh has become before me, for the earth is filled with violence through them. Behold, I will destroy them with the earth. Make yourself an ark of gopher wood. Make rooms in the ark and cover it inside and outside with pitch. And this is how you should make it. The length of the ark shall be 300 cubits, its width 50 cubits, and its height 30 cubits. You shall make a window for the ark, and you shall finish it to a cubit from above, and set the door of the ark in its side. You shall make it with lower, second, and third decks. And behold, I myself am bringing floodwaters on the earth, to destroy from under heaven all flesh, in which is the breath of life. Everything that is on the earth shall die. But I will establish my covenant with you, and you shall go into the ark, you, your sons, your wife, and your sons' wives with you. And of every living thing of all flesh you shall bring 2 of every sort into the ark, to keep them alive with you. They shall be male and female. Of the birds after their kind, of the animals after their kind, and of every creeping thing of the earth after its kind, 2 of every kind will come to you to keep them alive. And you shall take for yourself of all food that is eaten, and you shall gather it to yourself, and it shall be food for you and for them. Thus Noah did according to all God commanded him, so he did." Now what we see here in Genesis 6 is that the world has become corrupt. The world has become evil. The world has become full of sin. God looked around at everything He had created and saw how evil everyone was. And in verse 8 right there it says, "But Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord." That means that God looked at every human being that was on the earth at that time. Everyone. And out of everyone that was on the earth, and the Bible doesn't tell us how many people were there, but out of everyone on the earth, there was one person. One person that found grace. One person that was living for Christ, or living for God. One person that was living and doing what God wanted them to do. There was one person that was worth saving. Tonight I want to look at just a few points here in this passage in Genesis 6. The first point is God gave favor to Noah and his family. God gave favor to Noah and his family. God told Noah, first thing, and there's 2 things I want to talk about in this point, is God told Noah He was going to destroy the world. Look at verse 13. It says that God said to Noah, the end of all flesh has come before me, for the earth is filled with violence through them, and behold, I will destroy them with the earth. God didn't have to tell Noah this. God didn't have to do any of this. He could have just destroyed the earth and been done with it. And been done with all this. You go back here to the beginning here, and it says, "And the Lord was sorry that He had made man on the earth, and He was grieved in His heart." He had done all these things. He had made all this, and he made all these people, and he made all the animals, and he made all the beasts, and he made everything. And he made all the beauty that we see. And then what did man do? Man made it corrupt. And God said, I'm sorry that I made man. And he looked around and he saw Noah, and he told Noah he's going to destroy the world. Now, I thought about this week. And the Bible doesn't say this, but I can imagine after God told Noah that, hey, I'm going to destroy the world. I can imagine Noah probably told a few people. He probably told his neighbors. He probably went around preaching and saying, hey, God's going to destroy the world. We need to act better. We need to act right. We need to do things better. But I said the Bible doesn't say that. That's just kind of my thought on it. He's probably telling that the wrath of God, that the sin that they was committing and the evil that they was committing, that the wrath of God was fixed to be seen fully. And that God wasn't going to put up with it much longer. And that he was going to destroy them. And that he was going to get rid of them. The wrath they were bringing upon themselves for all their wickedness. The second thing we see right here is that God told Noah he would destroy the earth by a flood. Verse 17 says, and behold, I myself am bringing floodwaters on the earth to destroy from under heaven all flesh, in which is the breath of life. Everything that is on the earth shall die. Now, if you look in Genesis 1 through 6, till you get to that point, there's nothing about rain. There's nothing about water. There's nothing about any of that. So this is the first time they're ever going to see this. And I started thinking about this week. It's still been bugging me as I've been thinking about it. But why did God pick rain? Why did he pick a flood? At any point, God could have just snapped his fingers and thought it, and it would have been done. It would have been over. At any point, he could have said, no, I'm going to get rid of them. I'm going to start over here. I don't want any part of that. And I thought about this. He could have snapped his finger and destroyed all of mankind, but God chose to do it with a flood. The reason, like I said, I have absolutely no clue. But I can guarantee you this, God had a reason for it. There was a purpose behind it. I don't understand it, and that's one of those questions. I'm telling you, if I can ask questions when I get to heaven, y'all better not be behind me in line, because I'm going to be there for a while, because I got a bunch. But I don't know why he did that, but he did. And I'll tell y'all, the story of Noah always fascinates me every single time that I read through it. But God told Noah he was going to destroy the world. God tells us this whole world is going to be destroyed. You look on and you get in the New Testament, you look through Revelations, and you look through all the prophecies that are being fulfilled. And God tells us this whole world is going to be destroyed someday too. God tells it could happen any time. He tells us the end of the world is going to come like a thief in the night. We're not going to know the second or the minute that it's going to happen. He didn't tell Noah, hey, have this done by February the 2nd. I'm going to have everything done. I'm going to send a flood then. He just told him to go work on it. He told him to go work on it. He said, I'm going to destroy the world. Be prepared. Just like Noah, we can find grace in the Lord. Yeah. How? First, by accepting him. Second, by living for him. I told y'all my thoughts earlier on how I imagine Noah preaching and trying to save others from the flood. We should be doing the exact same thing. Yeah. We should be doing the exact same thing. We know that God's promise at the end of the world is going to happen. It's not a if it's going to happen, it's when it's going to happen. It's going to happen. Whether we're still here or whether we're called home, it's going to happen. Amen. The thing is, we've got to be preaching to everybody else and telling them the same thing. And a lot of times we say, well, they live and there's a church on every corner and they live down here right down the road from it. They know. But who's to say they really know? Who's to say anybody's ever shared the gospel with them? I share with y'all all the time. We make reason after reason to not do it. We make reason after reason to not share the gospel. Why do we do that? It's because a lot of time we're lazy. A lot of time we don't want to hinder ourselves. A lot of times we don't want to do something that's going to hurt us. We say, well, I've got to be here by 8 o'clock, so I ain't got time to do that. We got to say, well, I got to be here on this day. I got to do this. I can't do that. And we make reason after reason. We should be preaching Jesus. We should be preaching the gospel of Jesus. We should be preaching that Jesus came, that he died, that he rose again. And the best part to it is he's still on the throne today. Amen. And he's still sitting there. He's still saving people. We should be out there warning people that this world's going to be over. I've shared this passage time after time again, but in 1 John chapter 2, starting at verse 15, it says, do not love the world or the things in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of eyes, and the pride of life is not of the Father, but is of the world. Listen to verse 17. And the world is passing away in the lust of it, but he who does the will of God abides forever. God told Noah right here. He told Noah that at the end of the world, he told him he was going to destroy all man on the world. And so Noah went and he listened to God. And we're going to see that in a minute. He listened to God. He listened to God's commandments. And he did what God wanted him to do. And after that, God saved him. God saved him from the flood. God tells us right now that the end of the world is going to happen. He tells us that the end of the world is going to come. And he says all we've got to do is turn to his Son. We've got to accept him. We've got to live a life for him. And we're going to get the same treatment that Noah did. We ain't going to go out in an ark. God said on in Genesis there towards 7 and 8, he said, I'm never going to send a flood to do it again. He said, I'm not going to send you in an ark. He said, but I'm going to send my Son after you. He said, I'm going to send my Son after you. And we talked about it last week. We're either going to be called up to meet him in the air.
That's right.
And I don't know about you, but that excites me.
Amen.
Think about that. What kind of way is that to leave this earth? Knowing that we're going to be standing right there beside Jesus. We're going to meet him up there in the air, and he's going to take us home.
Amen. Amen.
Mm-hmm.
Second thing I want to look at is God gave Noah mercy. God told Noah to build an ark so he would not perish with the rest of the world. First, God directs Noah to build an ark. Now, looking at this, you can see this in cubits here, but the ark wasn't a small boat. It was a huge, huge ship. Mm-hmm. Now, if my math is correct, which, Mike over there is going to, I'll probably make an Auburn joke here in a minute. But 300, let's see here. 300 cubits is 450 foot. So that's 450 foot long, 75 foot wide, and 45 foot high. So you imagine that. This ain't a sailboat. This ain't a boat we're going to go fishing on. This is a huge, huge ship. I was talking to Roger and them earlier. I told him, I said, we went to Norfolk, Virginia on a mission trip one time a few years ago. It's probably, 7 or 8 years ago now. But one thing I'll never forget about driving into Norfolk is you drive right by the naval base. And you think about those ships and you think, man, those have got to be huge. But if you've ever seen one of those ships in person, the first thing you think is, how can that thing float? How can that thing float? And you see something like that. This wasn't just a small boat. This wasn't just what we think of when we see just a small boat out there. This was a huge ship that God told Noah to build. And think about this too. Noah didn't have the luxuries that we have. He didn't pull his generator out there and get his DeWalt drill and his DeWalt saw and go out there cutting. He didn't go get his truck and load up his wood at the Home Depot and go down there and get it. He had to go out and do everything by hand. So this was tough, hard labor that he was doing, but he knew that what he was doing was going to save his life and save his family's life. He knew the blessing that God had bestowed upon him. This was a ship and a boat. This was a ship that was going to be built upon the waters from the flood God had promised. And I thought about this. Why didn't God just save Noah? Think about that. This is another one of those questions I got. Well, why didn't God just say, I'm just going to save Noah? I'm just going to save him. I don't know how I'm just going to do it. God could have done it. He could have done it in any which way. But he wanted to teach a lesson through it. He wanted to teach a lesson on faithfulness. He wanted to teach a lesson on keeping his commandments. He wanted to teach a lesson on doing what he said to be done. He wanted this to show us. I believe he wanted to show us that when we follow God and we follow the commandments that he gives us and we follow the instructions that he gives on our life, that he'll save us. God could have just saved Noah, but he didn't. He had Noah make an ark. He did it to teach a lesson. Noah showed that when you trust in the Lord, when you listen to what he commands you to do, that no matter what happens, you'll be okay. Because God's in control. A lot of times we say, well, you don't know what I got going. We say, I got all these things going on. And I use the example all the time of a mountain. And we say, you don't know the mountain I've got going. You say, every time I think I get to the top, the mountain just keeps getting longer. And you say, I'm just fighting and fighting and fighting and fighting. And a lot of times we think, well, God's on the other side waiting for us to come. And he's standing there like this. Now, God's got his hand out and he's holding us. And he's holding us through each step. And he's teaching us something through it, through each and every time, just like he's teaching Noah here. The third thing is God gave Noah instructions for how the ark should be built. God didn't just say, go build something. Now, if you've ever built anything with me, Allison, she'll tell you firsthand that I'm not real good at drawing plans on paper. I just kind of go out and I picture it in my mind. And I say, this is how it's going to be done. And I go out there. And normally, it don't end up real well. Because normally Allison says, well, why don't you do this and why don't you do that? And then me and Allison, she normally goes one way and I go another. And anyway, it's a big process that I'm not going to get into. But I don't listen to instructions real well. Noah just didn't go out there and say, God didn't tell Noah to go out and do this. Go out and do it and it's better than however you want. Because when man's involved, I guarantee you Noah would rather just build a small little boat. He'd have rather built a small little ark just to save him and his family. But God had a bigger purpose in it, and he gave him instruction. God told Noah how he wanted it to be built. In verse 14, he says that it must be made of gopher wood. Towards the middle of verse 14, it says it must be divided into rooms with places fitted for all the animals and creatures, is basically what that's for. The end of verse 14 says must be pitched within and without. Verse 15, Noah was given exact dimensions. Verse 16, we see a little window toward the top. End of verse 16, must have a door on the side to go in and out. And then the end of verse 16 there, it says, you shall make it with a lower, second, and third deck. So God gave him a set of instructions. Now, I don't know if you're like me, and I don't know if this is just a guy thing or what, but most of the time when I'm building something, and I'm putting something together, I'll open the box, and I'll say, you want the instructions? I say, no, I don't need those instructions. I say, no, I don't need those. So I just throw them over there with the box and get rid of them. We don't want them. Well, what happens? After about 3 hours of me over there trying to get it to do and try to get it to work and end up, we built a TV, I'll just share this with y'all. We built a TV stand one time. And Allison told me to read the instructions. And I didn't want to read the instructions. Well, needless to say, I was over there with a Sharpie because I'd done messed up. And it was a black TV stand. I was over there with a Sharpie trying to color in what I had messed up on because I knew when she came in and saw it, it wasn't going to be good. And I think, as I recall, she did catch me with a Sharpie. But God gave, and I don't even know why I told that story, but I did. But God gave Noah a set of instructions to follow, and he said, follow them. He said, follow my commandments, follow these instructions. And who's to say, I thought about this week. It's another question I had. If Noah wouldn't have done everything like God wanted him to, would that ark have floated? No. It wouldn't have. God told him how that ark was going to float. He told him what he had to do. Same things with us. God tells us we've got to accept his son. And we've got to live for him. And we've got to live a life for him. He tells us we've got to do that to get into heaven. We can't say, well, just like I said this morning, we can't say, well, I went to church, so that's good enough. We can't say, well, I gave money in that offering plate, so that's good enough. We can't say, well, I came to a singing, so that's good enough. No. That's not the instructions that God gave us to follow. That's not the instructions God gave us to follow for our lives. God gave Noah these instructions to follow, and Noah followed them. If I were to ask you this question, if you were in Noah's shoes, if God had told you he was going to flood the earth and kill everyone, but he was going to save you and your family, and all you had to do was follow his instructions and build an ark, would you do it? Every single one of us, yeah. We'd do it. Hands down, I'd do it. I'd do it without power tools. I'd do it however God wanted me to do it. If God said, I'm going to get rid and I'm going to flood everything on this earth, and everything's going to be gone, but I'm going to, for you following me, and you've got grace. God said Noah had, the Bible says that Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. And he says, I'm going to save you. He says, I'm going to save you because you've lived a life. You've followed my commandments. You've done what I've asked you to do. He said, I'm going to save you. Would you do it? Each and every one of us would. Here's the thing, church. God's told us that the world's going to end. He's told us that this world's going to end. He's told us that this world will soon be destroyed. He didn't tell us to follow a set of instructions and build an ark that will save us. He told us to call on the name of his son. He told us to follow these instructions right here. From Genesis 1 to Revelation 22. He said we've got to follow these instructions. I want to ask you tonight, are you following these instructions? Because we can say, well, I'm picking and choosing. Well, if Noah would have picked and choose which ones he wanted to follow, that ark would have sank. We can't pick and choose what we're going to follow. We can't pick and choose what we're going to do. We can't say, well, I'm not going to go out and I'm not going to serve Christ. That's not going to work. Because Jesus said if he was a sinner, he said, go into all nations. We're on this earth for one sole purpose, and that's to serve Christ. Our sole purpose on this earth is to serve Christ. But a lot of times we fall short of that. A lot of times we don't do that. Why? Because we're worried about what we got going on. We got to keep that schedule. We've got to keep what we've got doing. We ain't got time to go talk to these people. Sometimes it's just like we talked about this morning. Sometimes it's like we have that same mentality that the church of Corinth had. We want to make it just our little clique. We don't want the sinners to come to church. And I've heard churches say that. I've heard churches say, we don't want the sinners to come to church. Well, we're all sinners. We've all fallen short. Me being a born-again sinner don't make it any better than anybody else. We're all sinners. We've all fallen short. Right. We all deserve God's grace. Well, none of us deserve God's grace. But God gave it to us. He didn't tell us to follow a set of instructions to build an ark. He told us to follow the Bible. God's told us just like he told Noah This earth's going to be destroyed one day. But just like Noah, God has given us an opportunity to be saved. He gave us an opportunity to be saved. He gave us that opportunity to turn to Him. This morning we talked about examining ourselves, and we talked about that sin that's deep down. We talked about that sin that everybody else don't see, that they may not see outside. That sin that only us and God talk about. And I talked about this morning, and it's something I want to share again. But the beautiful thing is, when we let go of that sin, when we get rid of that sin, it's gone. When we give it to God and we confess it, it's gone. It's no more. A lot of times we get in this mentality and we say, well, I've done this and this and this and this. God can't forgive me for it. God said, I can forgive you for it. He said, I'll forgive you for those sins. He said, forgive them, put them at the altar, put them to me, forget about them, walk away from them. He says, I don't care how many times you come. Because let me tell you, if there was a count on how many times that we could sin, every one of us would fall short. I'd be gone a long time ago. God hadn't wadded me up like a piece of paper and thrown me away yet. And the Bible says He ain't going to. He's not going to throw any of us away. But we've got to be faithful. God saved Noah. He saved Noah from the flood. Why? Because it says right here. He saved Noah because Noah followed God's commandments. Because he followed what God told him to do. Think about that. All the earth is wicked and sinful. All the earth. And Noah was the one that got saved. Noah was the one. And you think about this. I thought about this week too. You think about if you go out and you build a 450-foot boat in your yard. Okay? You're building an ark. Okay? Your neighbor's going to drive by and think you've absolutely lost it. They're going to think you're crazy. They're going to think you have no idea what's going on. Now, when the rain started coming and the flood, they probably thought you had a little sense at that point in life. But it's too late. But you think about this. Noah, even Noah, and the Bible doesn't say any of this, but you think about this. In the world we live in, the world says that going to church on Sunday mornings and going to church on Wednesday nights and living what the Bible says, they say that's crazy. They say, why don't you come out here and do all these things? Why don't you do all this? Why don't you come have fun? That's the key word. I love when I'm walking around and talking to people and you hear people on campus that talk about going and having all this fun. Well, all their fun's involving going to all these bars and drinking and all this stuff. And there's two guys behind me in class, and maybe they'll watch this video. There's two guys behind me in class that every time, all they talk about, every Tuesday, is getting every weekend, I think from Thursday, I think they start weekends on Thursday. From Thursday to Sunday night, they talk about going out, and they call it getting trashed. Getting partying. I mean, I'm talking about just partying hard. And they talk about, yeah, man, I couldn't remember what went on. I couldn't remember all this. That don't sound like fun to me. That don't sound enjoyable to me. If that's what the world says is fun, I don't want any part of it.
Amen.
Because let me just tell you, that fun right there is going to lead you straight to hell.
That's right.
I have fun at church. We all laugh. We all joke. We all have a good time. I don't understand that we're not going to have fun. Now, like I said, that may be a rant. I don't even know where that came from either. But those people, maybe they'll listen to that video. I don't know. But what I'm saying is this right here. God's gave each and every one of us a chance to be saved. Just like He gave Noah on that ark. And people may have thought Noah was crazy for building that ark. People may have thought that he had lost it. People may have thought they had never seen rains. He may have thought he has no idea what he's talking about. But when that flood water came, they realized how wrong they was. Because Noah and his family was the only ones that were saved. Noah and his family, the ones that kept God's commands. You tell me this right here. People say all the time, they say, well, if God really loves me, He's going to save everybody. There's no hell. If God really loves me, everybody's going to be in heaven. God loves you. But there's a point where you're going to have to make a decision. Do you love Him?
That's right.
Just like these people right here. God said, the people that love me, I'm going to save. The people that don't, I'm going to destroy. They're going to be gone. We have that same decision. We have that same decision to make. When we get to heaven or we get to judgment, we're either going to hear, well done, my good and faithful servant. We're going to say, and God's going to say, I saved you. He's going to say, I saved you. We're going to say, depart from me, for I never knew you. And I've told y'all time and time again, I can't imagine the thought that's going through somebody's mind, if you can even think at that point. When somebody hears, depart from me, for I never knew you. Because that's an eternal decision that don't just affect tomorrow. It don't just affect next week. It affects the rest of your eternity.
Right.
And I can't imagine that thought. But I want to ask you tonight, if there's anything you feel led to do tonight, anything you need to take care of, the altar's open. As we get a song invitation, I want to ask you, do you know Jesus? I want to ask you, do you know Jesus? I want to ask you, if God was to come down, and God tells us that the end of the world is going to come, like a thief in the night, it's going to be destroyed. It's going to end. There's no doubt about it. Have you accepted Christ? Because that's the only instructions that we're given, is to accept Christ and to follow Him. That's the instructions we've got to follow to be saved. And we've got to keep His commandments. As we get a song of invitation.
Number 902.